What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. So we had just gotten back from a 6-day bike tour, averaging over 70 miles a day out in the hot heat, fully loaded bikes and all that. So when I went out for this ride the day after, in the back of my mind, I was thinking about the concept of, oh, well, this is a recovery ride, and then started to question, what does that even mean for someone who's not a competitive cyclist in any way? So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, but first, as you already saw, I am messing around with a new 360 camera. So I do want to talk about that camera a little bit and the fact that this edit is completely different than what I normally do, but we'll circle back and get to that a little later in the video. So we got back from our tour on a Saturday evening. So on Sunday, I did a few things that I needed to get done around the place, cleaned up some stuff and all that. But then I was like, man, it's Sunday afternoon. It's pretty nice out. I kind of want to go for a bike ride. I hopped on my drop bar gravel bike after having spent a week on my loaded, ATB all-terrain bike with sweet bars and wider tires and all that. And I just felt so good. So as I got out there and started riding, I'm riding a little faster than I had anticipated, where in my mind it was going to be this simple, really chill cruise. And so I just felt good. I felt fast. I was having fun on the non-loaded bike and everything. And then I'm like, I think I'm going to go a little farther than I anticipated. And I actually got to the point where I'm like, well, I'm kind of past where I could pick up any kind of snack. So maybe I'll just go all the way to Peninsula and get lunch. And I did that, as you'll see in the video. And then when I left there, I felt really good. And I ended up just kind of bombing down the road at a pretty good clip. And I thought, if I feel like this, what is the point of a recovery ride? Because I don't need to recover. I know my body and I'm feeling good and I'm having fun. So why not just ride the way I want? And I thought that out loud, but it's funny because that's always what I do. I always just kind of ride how I'm feeling. If I go out and I feel lethargic, but I still want to be outside, I just ride slow, or I go cruise around downtown, maybe go around a lake. Maybe I still ride even a little bit of a distance, but I just don't ride at the pace I would if I was just feeling really good and feeling strong. So all those words, recovery rides and training stuff, I think just creep into our language because of the way the cycling industry markets itself and pro cycling, which is something I love and watch a lot about, and watch the Tour de France right now and all those things. And then I guess they just start to creep into my mentality once in a while. And then I remind myself like, oh yeah, I don't care. I just listen to my body and do what my body tells me. And none of this is to say there's anything wrong with people who like those numbers and like to use sports science and all that kind of stuff as part of their riding, even if they're not doing competitive stuff, or if you specifically are training for competitive stuff, you probably should be doing those things. Just that, for me, it's just not something that's very relevant, which ties into a lot when people ask me how I train for different stuff. Like, I know when I put out the full video of our bike tour next week, people will be asking me, like, how did you get in shape for something like this? And I have the super unsatisfying answer of, I like to ride my bike all the time, and I ride my bike all the time. And so that's not a good answer for someone who's obviously asking that question and, wants to understand something more, might be newer to cycling. But I think in general, the thing is, just like when I got back into it about 10 years ago, you go for a 10-mile ride and that feels hard. But then after a few weeks, you go for a 20-mile ride and that feels hard. And then maybe you ride farther, or maybe you just start to ride faster. And it's just, that slow building up of just being a stronger rider or being a rider with more endurance. That being said, I fully know, like, as I mentioned, there are people who really like numbers and really like metrics and really like plans. And there is so much of that out there now. If you wear a smartwatch, there's apps for that. There's apps for your phone. There's apps on your computer. There's apps for your bike computer and all that. So if you have like a goal in mind, there are all these apps with dynamic training plans where you put in the date of your goal, say it's a century ride at the end of summer, and it'll build out a plan for you that you follow. And even if you miss a day, you put that in and it's going to adjust for that and all that kind of thing. So if you're one of those people, that stuff exists and is all out there. And also there's even like online coaching and online training and all that kind of stuff if you even want more one-on-one help to get somewhere you want to be. Again, I don't have like the advice or reviews on any of that stuff because I don't use it. I just ride, but that stuff does exist if that's something you're looking for. This ride here for me, I just had to pick up some products for a photo shoot. So I kind of just extended my ride a little bit on a hot day and turned what would have been like an 8-mile round trip into something a little longer. But I didn't have a lot of time, so it was a short day and I just got that ride in. But speaking of that too, I am someone who has a freelancer schedule and I don't have any children and no intention to. So I also understand that the way I could ride my bike is different than the way a lot of other people are able to. And just ramping up your mileage and your speed slowly is actually one of the worst ways to train. It works, it's just not the most efficient and it's not the fastest way to get to a goal you may want to. So that being said, if you have limited time, but you don't want to totally buy into a training plan, you should just look into stuff like interval training at least a little bit, do some Google research and all that, because riding in intervals and stuff like that with limited time is going to be a way more efficient way to get to a goal that you may be trying to achieve. Or just to become a better cyclist if that's what you want, because maybe you just want to be able to ride with people who can ride farther and faster than you. And that's one of the reasons a lot of times for me on certain bike rides that I might be alone and I just decide to try and climb a couple hills really hard, or I just try and keep a pace up a little bit. It's just because I do like to have that ability when I'm riding with some riders stronger than me. Maybe they'll end up riding a little slower than they normally would, and I maybe ride a little bit faster than I normally would, but it kind of bridges that gap because I just do like to be able to ride with a lot of different people. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions about that. Like I said, I'm not an expert on training and stuff like that, but I do ride 6,500 miles at least a year and have for years. So, and I read a lot and I watch a lot of YouTube about cycling, so might have an opinion or just may be able to point you in the right direction of something that you're looking for more specifically. So on this day, I had been staring at my screen all day long, doing some work, getting caught up after our vacation, and I decided I just wanted to get out for a little while. I decided to head over to Highland Square to see if a buddy of mine was working at the bar he usually works at, and then I was going to just answer some more emails and YouTube questions there. But that's where I also wanted to try and mess around a little bit more with this camera that I had mentioned at the beginning of this video. So Akaso had sent me their new 360 camera. It's their first one, I believe. They had sent me an action camera a couple years before. It really wasn't something that I was that hyped on. It was just a little bit too far behind the GoPros and the DJIs for what I like. They were not trying to compete with the latest GoPros or anything like that, but I just felt like even buying a GoPro a couple generations old would have been better than it. So I didn't really have super high expectations for their 360 camera. If you know, Insta360 is kind of the biggest players in this market, and this camera has a similar form factor and specs-wise, which I'm not going to go through, that's not the kind of channel this is, seems to compete with their X3, so I would say it's a couple generations older, but just to get the camera is $200, which is extremely affordable. And then to get their combo kit or whatever, where you get the selfie stick, which you would definitely want whether you bought separate or not, extra battery, charging case, and all that is around $250. So right out of the box, I had started to post some Instagram stories, just taking it over to the app. I was really impressed. The app was really functional, really intuitive, and easy to figure out. It also will do all the editing stuff for you. That's not my style. You know, I like to put in the little keyframes and do all the camera movements myself. But if that's something you're into, it's there. They're definitely targeting beginners at this price point. But I was really impressed with the image for social media right off the bat. I was like, I would use this anywhere. Shorts, Reels, TikTok. I don't use TikTok, but if I did, you know, so all that kind of stuff, stories, it's great for that. But I'm like, what's this going to look like when I bring it over into my actual laptop and editing computers and then drop it into Premiere Pro after using their apps? And I have to say, I'm really impressed. I mean, the image is not the image I would get, you know, at 5.3K off just my GoPro. But at 180 with these, you know, or 360 with two 180 lenses, I'm super impressed. There's like parts of the image that obviously can be a little bit soft, but at the same time, it's like barely noticeable. And I think it's kind of like that drone effect where you're getting such a unique effect that a little bit of less image quality isn't really that big of a deal. But I'm happy to put out like this YouTube video, and I would still use this in future YouTube videos where maybe I'm mixing it with footage from other cameras as well. So all in all, super impressed for a $200 camera for sure, but also impressed enough that I would still use this footage in other ways. Over the years, people have suggested to me that I try a 360 camera, and I have never been interested in it. Not because I don't think it would be cool, because I do think it's cool, and I've had a lot of fun messing around with it and messing around with these edits. But the fact that I didn't want to do that extra layer of editing, because you do have to edit the footage to pick, which perspective you want, as you'll see as I'm moving it around here, which is super cool, but it adds a whole nother layer of what you're doing when you're making a YouTube video or any kind of videos if it's just not a single clip on your phone. So it's one of those things now that I'm thinking about. It's like, man, this is like having 5 different cameras with me. It's so cool just to capture everything. And I have a video coming out where I'm actually riding with my friends, so where I could choose whether the camera is on me or like right here, I'm switching it from it being on me to showing me jumping out into the road and then panning up and showing the buildings and then going around the curve and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool, but it does, there's no doubt about it, adds a whole nother layer of what you have to do to your edits. So right now there's a big novelty to it and I'm really enjoying messing around with it. I'll definitely get better at it. I think this edit is a little over the top as I try and figure it out, and there's stuff that could be a lot smoother and, probably look a little bit better. But it is a lot of fun. I want to see how it feels going forward down the road. I think what will happen is there'll be certain rides where I know this camera makes sense for, and so I'll bring it. And then there'll be other times where it's like maybe I'll have it with me and I'll be like, this is a part of where I'm making a video where it would look really cool and I'll use it. So it'll kind of be mixed in there instead of just always being the primary thing. And also the editing style, I think, because usually I just make like really short, quick cuts. And even if I take my GoPro and I'm filming what's in front of me and then I turn and film what's behind me, I'll cut out that transition. Whereas using a 360 camera, like you could see right here, the fluid transitions, I think, are almost like part of it. So I'm not sure. I'll need to make more videos like this and mess with it to decide what is the aesthetic of using it that makes the most sense. But here I'm clearly going over the top and just trying everything because that's the only way really to learn how it works. And also I think when you get something new, the tendency is to kind of, at least for me, push it as far as you can, but then dial stuff back to be a little bit more tasteful. So already from my Instagram stories, most people are saying like, wow, that's really cool. Or like YouTube stuff like, oh, that's pretty neat. Like I'm enjoying this. But then there's 1 or 2 people who are being like, I can't watch this. So I have shot a full another video with this camera, but I have not edited it at all yet. So after seeing this a few times and then hearing some of your responses, we'll see how that maybe affects my editing when I use a 360 camera. But yeah, for now, it's a lot of fun. There'll be links to this one down below. If you're really in the market, I think I would try on YouTube to see if anyone's done like a super nerdy comparison to the different versions of other 360 cameras out there. But I don't know, $200 is definitely a good deal and something that I think is worth it for what you get out of this guy. And the other thing is, I would say any gripes I do have with this camera or anything with the editing process is completely irrelevant because of the price point. So there's a couple things on like a very professional level that maybe bother me, like keyframes being more dynamic like they could in Premiere Pro, where I could ease them out and ease them in and put in Beziers and all that stuff. But that's not a legit criticism because that's not even the market they're going for with this camera. And if you saw me talking a little earlier in the video, it was partially because I wanted to test out the microphones, but I didn't put any of that in here because it's not a legit comparison to anything, because I would never film audio from any kind of action camera without some kind of dead cat or windscreen over the mics. So there's a lot of wind noise, but you can hear my voice. So I do think with some windscreens, the audio will be usable, but it's not fair or legit to put it in here and then talk about it when I'm not doing what I would do to all my other cameras before I would use them for audio. Got the camera here. So let me know any questions, comments, positive, negative feedback on these longer style clips with the more fluid transitions and all that thing, whether you like it, whether you hate it, whether you want to see more of it. And that will do it for this video. I will see you in the next one. Thanks as always for watching. Give this video a thumbs up. Peace.
Where's the man? Oh, hello, Edmund. Are you ready for dinner? Are you hungry? I bet you are. I'm a little late.